Sis, hey. From this point until the day I die, I am on a rescue mission. I'm coming to save women who have been attacked, beaten down, and tricked by the enemy. Some of us find the strength to get up with very little support. Others of us need a helping hand or two. I'm here to be as many helping hands as you need. I'm openly sharing my life experiences and lessons with you so we can walk through life together. No sister left behind. I'm coming to get you, and we're going to get through this thing together, okay? Now, you've heard my story about how I had my heart broken in 2017. If you haven't, please go back and follow that journey. It'll help you understand why what I'm about to say is super important. Now, I have a huge suspicion that my last series convicted some of you to the point that it caused you to break it off with Bae. I won't apologize for that. What I will do is give you practical steps to keep it moving without looking back. If you're going through a breakup right now, this series is for you. If you're dealing with romantic heartbreak, no matter how much time has passed since it's been over, this series is for you. If you're holding on to a past relationship that you know is toxic, this series is for you. If you're a friend to someone who needs help letting go of a relationship, this series is for you too. I'm calling it Egypt versus Eden because for the child of God, biblically and metaphorically speaking, Egypt is a place of bondage, mourning, and captivity, while Eden is a place of godly pleasure, delight, and paradise. I'm here to help you stay out of Egypt and get back to Eden. So when it comes to relationships, what exactly does it look like to be in Egypt? What exactly does it look like to be in Eden? Here are some key indicators.
5 time to get over. Thinking maybe one last try. Don't you get lost in nostalgia?
Egypt is a place that will kill things you've birthed in order to hinder the rate at which you do what God told you to do. In Exodus 1:22, Pharaoh commanded his people to kill the newborn sons of God's people because they were multiplying so fast, but they were doing exactly what God commanded in Genesis 1:28. He said, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it." So what does this look like in my last relationship? Well, I did my research. I committed to actively engaging in the battle against lust on July 8th, 2017.
1 week later.
On July 15th, 2017 is when I met the last guy I was talking to. Exactly 1 week after the desire to kill my flesh was born, Egypt was back on my radar. This was a newborn desire and also a commandment from God. And before I even had time to love and nurture it properly, the enemy found a way to come in and snatch it from me. Now, I'm not saying the person I was dating was like Pharaoh or Egypt, but the spirit behind the relationship was. One thing we must learn to do is separate the spirit from the person. It's easy to attack the person because we can see them. What we need to be vigilant about is warring against the spirit and the attack that is camouflaged behind the person. In contrast, if you read Genesis 2, where it talks about what God placed in the Garden of Eden, you'll see that this was a place full of and conducive to life. Trees, vegetation, rivers, and living creatures were all a part of Eden. It knew no death. When you take a look at Exodus 1:11 through 14, you'll find that it was in Egypt where God's people were inflicted with heavy burdens and made slaves. In my own situation, I experienced the burdens of unhealthy comparisons, insecurities, emotional instability, unrest, and a distant relationship with God. Most of the burdens I carried into Egypt myself, but they were heightened because my place there in the relationship never felt secure. I was never made to feel like I could give my all because I had reason to believe that something newer or better would come along and replace me. In Eden, God was as near to its inhabitants as their next breath, literally. There was great safety and security there. In Egypt, the people of God were to make bricks, but were not given straw to do so. They were forced to strive to do work with no resources. In my own relationship, I was given very little of substance, but I was striving to make something that would last out of it, to no avail. I toiled, I labored, I was trying to force myself into a committed relationship with a man who could, for very valid reasons, only give me his bare minimum. At the end of Genesis 1 and into Genesis 2, God makes it clear that He is the one who would supply the resources they would need in Eden. They didn't have to slave to get it or prove that they were worthy of it. He provided because that's just who He is. So in that relationship that you're trying to move forward from, your own personal Egypt, how often did you find yourself crying out to God to make things better? How frequently did you groan to him because something just wasn't right? What if God heard you and his answer to your prayer was setting you free from the bondage, setting you free from the relationship? Please read Numbers 11, because it tells us that once they got out of Egypt, the people's strong cravings caused them to complain. Watch those cravings, sis. They were grumbling about not having food. They said there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. The word "but" after the extreme "nothing at all" nullifies everything that was said before it. Nothing at all but this manna? You mean nothing at all but God's provision? So you do have something to eat, you just don't want to eat that. You don't want the provision you don't have to work for. God's people requested to go back to Egypt because they had fish to eat there. Like, what? You were slaving and burdened and killing yourself to get that fish. You want to go back to being a slave for some fish? It sounds crazy, but that's what happens when we keep entertaining the thought of trying again with these exes who are no good for us. Sidebar, I've heard women say, well, I remember when I was being wined and dined. I just want to go out with somebody and not have to pay for a meal. Sis, don't you compromise your progress for a free meal. Look at what happened with Jacob and Esau. Don't you open up a door for the enemy just for some free food. God provides ways for you to buy your own meal, so don't complain about that. Don't do it. Don't. Their complaining made the Lord very angry. When our cravings cause us to complain about where God has us, i.e. singleness, versus what he's brought us out of, i.e. bad relationships, that makes him angry. He may answer you and give you what you want because you complained. However, Numbers 11:33 tells us that for those who were complaining, the very thing they asked for to replace God's provision was the very thing that killed them. So listen, get your life right. Get your posture right. Practice gratitude. Be grateful for what you do have while you're still on this side of marriage. For the things you don't have, I think it's okay for you to present them to God without complaining. Like, Father, I thank you for this time of singleness, but I do wish to find romantic love again. But don't you dare complain about being single, because I believe that even in your singleness, God is providing for you, and you need to be grateful for that. Are you still trying to go back to the bondage of Egypt? Or are you ready for all that God has prepared for you in Eden? Let me know in the comments, and keep it real. You know how we do around here. I won't know how to help if you aren't completely honest about where you are on your journey. Next week, we're going to start easing on down the road to Eden. You coming? You better. See you next week. Until then, stay beautiful.
Maybe one last try, don't you get lost in